Hansel and Gretel. A poor woodcutter, his second wife, and his two children, Hansel and Gretel, lived in a small cottage next to the great forest. The woodcutter was so poor he could barely provide the children with their daily bread. A great famine was approaching the land, making things more difficult for the woodcutter and his family. "How can we feed our children when we have nothing for ourselves?" the woodcutter cawed to his wife one night. "Let us take the children deep into the forest tomorrow morning and leave them to fend for themselves with nothing but a piece of bread each. They will not be able to find their way back home and we would be rid of them," the wife said coldly. The woodcutter reluctantly agreed, believing the children better off foraging for food in the woods than at home where there was nothing to eat. Little did they know, Hansel and Gretel lay awake in their beds in the next room and saw the entire conversation. What will we do, sister?" Hansel cawed shakingly. "Not to worry, Hansel. I have an idea. Let's get some rest," Gretel cawed confidently. In the early morning, before the adults got up, Gretel went outside, collected white pebbles, and put them in her dress pocket. As she got back to the cottage, the stepmother was just entering the kitchen. "Ah, there you are, child. Wake up your brother. Your father will be taking you both into the forest to chop more wood." While following their father into the woods, Gretel slyly dropped pebbles behind her until they stopped to chop wood. The children and their father got to work, chopping wood until the sun was high, indicating lunchtime. Hansel and Gretel both ate the small pieces of bread their father gave them and rested their eyes as they lay in the sunlight. The children opened their eyes after what seemed only moments, only to find that their father was gone. Cawing, Hansel whimpered, "Oh no, we fell asleep and now we can't follow our father home." "See these white pebbles?" Gretel cawed, pointing to the trail she had left. "That's how we are going to find our way home." "How clever you are, sister!" Together, they followed the trail until the cottage came into sight. The woodcutter and his wife were surprised to see the children enter the cottage. "Well, it's about time you got home. You shouldn't be lollygagging around and losing your father," the stepmother snapped. Gretel noticed the woodcutter sadly smile behind her as he wrapped his arms around his two children. Later that night, the children again saw the adults' conversation. "This time, take them deeper into the forest," the stepmother harshly spoke. "Yes, dear," the woodcutter cawed. Hansel looked at his sister only to see that she was not at all worried. He knew he could trust his sister. They went to sleep. However, before Gretel could get up to collect more white pebbles, the stepmother woke them up. "The sun hasn't risen yet," Hansel cawed. "Your father wants to chop more wood today, so get ready," the stepmother replied. Gretel transliterated for Hansel. There was no chance for Gretel to collect pebbles without anybody looking. The stepmother gave them both even smaller pieces of bread and shooed them out the door. The woodcutter brought the children deep into the great forest. Without any pebbles, Gretel used pieces of the bread instead to leave a trail for them to get home. This was the most deep into the forest the children had ever gone. When they finally stopped walking, they started chopping away. "Wait here," the woodcutter cawed to the children. "I need to look around for more dry wood. This seems to be rotten." The children waited for quite a while. They then realized their father wasn't coming back. Hansel and Gretel started heading home. "Where's the trail, sister?" Hansel cawed. Gretel pointed to the ground. "It's somewhere over here." She looked and looked, but couldn't find any bread pieces. "Oh no, the birds and woodland creatures have eaten the bread pieces," Gretel cawed, exclaiming. "What shall we do?" Hansel remembered. "I know we came from somewhere in that direction." The children kept walking for what seemed to be hours until they finally saw smoke coming from a chimney. "Over there!" Hansel exclaimed. They ran towards the smoke, only to find that although it was indeed a cottage, it was not theirs. "Let's ask for directions," Hansel cued. Gretel was wary of approaching strangers, but then a pleasant aroma was coming from the cottage. It smelled so good, like something was baking in the oven, that Gretel agreed. Hansel knocked on the door. A woman, all covered in flour, opened the door. "We are lost. Might you help us find our way home?" Gretel politely asked the woman, queuing. The woman curiously stared at Gretel's hands for a moment before responding. "But of course, come in and have some pie I just baked, while I clean up and I'll help you then." The woman led them into a room filled with sweets. There were cakes, cookies, pies, muffins, and candy. The children drooled. The woman beckoned Hansel to sit down and eat. Hansel started gobbling away at the sweets. "Little girl, before you eat, might you please explain what it was you were doing with your hands?" the woman asked Gretel. Little did the children know, the woman was actually a witch in disguise and used the sweets as a way to lure children into the cottage so she could eat them. Gretel sat in the living room with the woman, teaching her how to queue. After the woman got the basics down, Gretel started for the room filled with sweets. It was then that the witch showed her true self, grabbing a hold of Gretel, slamming the door and locking it shut. She put the skeleton key in her apron pocket. Gretel screamed. Hansel banged on the door and pulled on the window bars to no success. "Fetch some water," the witch ordered Gretel after putting shackles on her ankles. For days, the witch continued to feed Hansel the best foods while giving only crumbs to Gretel. It was her intention to fatten up Hansel so she could eat him. "Hansel, stick out your finger through the window so I can check whether you are fat yet," the witch ordered. Hansel looked confused. "Hansel's not great at lip reading, so you will have to cue for him to understand you," Gretel cued. The witch repeated her request, this time cueing. Hansel understood this time. Knowing that the witch was poorly sighted, Hansel found a chicken bone and stuck it through the window. The witch believed it to be his bony finger. She sighed. Weeks went by, and Hansel still had not gotten any fatter, for he continued to trick her with the chicken bone. Frustrated, the witch ordered Gretel to start a fire in the oven so she could eat them both. "I don't care whether he's fat or not. I'm hungry," the witch yelled in impatience. She pushed poor Gretel outside to the oven. "Check whether the oven is hot enough," the witch instructed. Gretel, knowing what the witch had in mind for her, played dumb. "I don't know how to do that," she cooed. The witch groaned and muttered, "Foolish girl, watch me." She bent towards the oven, checking with her hands how hot the oven was. "Like this," she cooed haltingly. "Foolish witch," Gretel said as she pushed her into the oven. She closed the iron door, latching it shut. Gretel watched as the witch howled, burning up. After the witch was nothing but a pile of ash, Gretel watered down the flames and used the meat to pick up the hot skeleton key. She unlocked her shackles, then ran to let Hansel out of the room. Hansel and Gretel hugged each other, jumping for joy. "Sister, look here and see what I found," Hansel cooed as he removed a loose wooden board and pointed to a chest filled with jewels. Gretel gasped. The children filled their pockets with the jewels and headed back into the woods. They walked and walked until the woods grew more familiar to them. Finally, they saw their father's cottage in the distance and ran all the way to the cottage. The woodcutter was overjoyed to see his children again. He had left his second wife after he realized that she was cold and cared for nobody but herself. That should have been obvious after she refused to learn cute speech, the woodcutter thought. Since then, the woodcutter searched the woods every day for his children. How glad I am that you are both all right, the woodcutter cooed, crying as he embraced his children. I'll never leave you both again, no matter how poor we are. The important thing is that we have each other. Hansel and Gretel pulled all the jewels out of their pockets and showed them to their father. We can now afford to eat more, Gretel cooed as she wrapped her arm around her little brother. Now all their cares were at an end, and they lived happily together.